Imagine being trapped in the middle of the Andes, surrounded by jagged peaks, freezing winds, and snow so thick you can barely see your own hands. And the sun is blocked by clouds, temperatures drop to unbearable lows, and avalanches threaten to bury you alive at any moment. This is not fiction. This is the harrowing story of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, a flight that became a nightmare and a testament to human endurance, courage, and the will to survive. 45 passengers boarded Flight 571 on October 12, 1972. Most of them were young athletes from the Old Christians rugby team, accompanied by friends and family. Their destination was Santiago y Chile, a match, a vacation, a journey full of hope. But the Andes had other plans. Within hours, these ordinary people would find themselves facing extraordinary danger and impossible choices. Again, in the coming weeks, some of them would experience hunger that cut to the bone, freezing nights that stole their warmth, and moments of despair that tested the limits of morality. Could you survive when the odds are stacked so high and nature itself seems determined to end your life? This is the story of survival against the impossible. But before we get started, please hit the subscribe button for more fascinating content. The passengers of Flight 571 were mostly young men in their early 20s. Faith, vibrant, ambitious, and full of energy. Nando Parado was one of them, a determined rugby player with dreams of competing internationally. Beside him was Roberto Canessa, another young player known for his intelligence and determination. Other passengers included families traveling together, couples seeking adventure, and flight attendants whose calm professionalism would later save lives. Captain Julio Ferradas had years of flying experience, and his company pilot Dante Laguirara was equally skilled. Together, they navigated thousands of miles of South American skies. But even seasoned pilots can be challenged by the Andes, a region where weather can change in minutes, and mountains hide behind clouds like silent predators. As the plane approached the mountains, passengers marveled at the beauty of snow-capped peaks. Little did they know that this beauty hid danger. The Andes are unforgiving. Families waved goodbye at the airport, completely unaware that, for some of their loved ones, this journey would be their last. The mood on the plane was a mix of excitement and routine chatter. But the mountains above were silent, waiting. At 2:30 p.m., disaster struck. The plane collided with a mountainside, shattering the fuselage. Windows exploded, seats tore free, and chaos erupted. 12 passengers died instantly, and some thrown from the aircraft, others crushed beneath twisted metal. Miraculously, 29 survived, but they were trapped in a cold, snow-covered shell, cut off from the outside world. Captain Ferradas and his company pilot were gravely injured, but still alive. The flight attendants did their best to calm passengers, handing out chocolate and wine as a temporary comfort. But the cold seeped into every crevice, and the survivors soon realized that warmth and food would be far scarcer than they ever imagined. The survivors faced a horrifying reality. They were hundreds of miles from civilization, surrounded by jagged peaks, and at the mercy of freezing temperatures. Avalanches, high winds, and whiteout conditions meant that even rescue was impossible in the immediate term. Time became their greatest enemy. Among the survivors, panic, fear, and shock mixed with hope. Some prayed, some tried to take charge, and some simply stared at the snow outside, unable to comprehend their situation. The Andes had claimed the lives of the unsuspecting, but for those still alive, survival would require courage, ingenuity, and unimaginable resilience. For the next 10 days, the survivors endured unimaginable conditions. Temperatures fell to minus 30 degrees Celsius at night. Snow and ice constantly threatened to crush them. Conking and avalanches became an ever-present danger. Their supplies were minimal: chocolate, wine, a few sodas, and hope. Water came from melting snow, but that too was limited and difficult to obtain. Every day was a battle against frostbite, hunger, and despair. An avalanche struck their fuselage, claiming 12 more lives. Survivors had to cope with injuries, loss, and the psychological weight of watching friends die. Fear was constant, yet amidst the horror, small acts of heroism emerged. A player shared his tiny chocolate ration with someone weaker. A flight attendant bandaged a wound, refusing to leave anyone behind. The human mind under extreme stress behaves in strange ways. Some survivors became withdrawn, others hyper alert, every sound and shadow signaling potential danger. To maintain sanity, they established routines, rituals, and systems of care. Every day was measured, every decision critical, yet even amidst despair, hope never fully disappeared. After more than 10 days trapped in the Andes, starvation became a grim reality. The small rations of chocolate and wine were gone. Water from melted snow could only sustain life for so long, and death surrounded them as the cold and avalanches claimed more lives. It was then that the survivors faced a choice that would haunt them forever. To survive, they would need to use the bodies of their deceased friends as food. This decision was not made lightly. The survivors debated, argued, and struggled with morality. Would they cross this ultimate boundary and still see themselves as human? In the end, instinct won over hesitation. With careful planning and respect, they rationed the flesh of those who had already perished. Every bite was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the extreme lengths humans will go to survive. Psychologically, this ordeal pushed every survivor to the brink. Survivor guilt, shame, and anxiety became constant companions. Yet, in these extreme circumstances, they discovered an almost miraculous capacity for adaptation. Small routines, prayers, and shared responsibilities kept hope alive. They kept journals, sketched maps, and silently promised each other, "We will survive somehow." The survivors learned to ration meticulously, plan every movement, and use ingenuity to maintain warmth. Pieces of clothing were shredded to insulate the fuselage. Snow was melted using whatever heat they could muster. Every day was a battle, and every night a test of endurance. Their bodies weakened, but their minds remained focused on survival. The Andes became both prison and teacher. Here, morality, courage, and survival instincts intertwined, and they were forced to confront the ultimate question: what is life worth, and how far would you go to preserve it? After 16 grueling days, two of the strongest survivors, Fernando Parado and Roberto Canessa, decided that waiting for rescue was no longer an option. Their plan was simple yet near impossible: trek across the Andes on foot, through mountains few had ever crossed. The distance to civilization was over 40 miles, over frozen rivers, sheer cliffs, and snowdrifts taller than a man. Their supplies minimal, their experience with mountaineering practically none, their hope fragile but unyielding. The journey was a test of physical and mental endurance. Every step risked falling into a crevasse. Snowstorms threatened to disorient them completely. Their feet froze inside makeshift shoes, gaunt hands became raw from exposure, and hunger gnawed at their bellies. They ate small bits of chocolate from previous rations, melted snow for water, and clung to the belief that someone, somewhere, would eventually find them. Parado and Canessa navigated the mountains using landmarks, sheer determination, and intuition. Nights were spent huddled together, shivering, barely able to sleep. Days were filled with climbing, slipping, and calculating the risk of each move. They were literally fighting for life, each step a triumph over death itself. On the third day of this perilous journey, their persistence paid off. They encountered a Chilean shepherd who could hardly believe the sight of two ragged, frost-bitten men emerging from the white wasteland. The shepherd immediately alerted authorities, setting in motion a rescue that would save the remaining 14 survivors at the crash site. The rescue was a miracle born from courage, ingenuity, and sheer willpower. Against impossible odds, 16 people survived 72 days trapped in the mountains. Their story would shock, inspire, and challenge the world's understanding of human endurance and moral limits. The world watched in disbelief as news of the survivors spread. Families who had mourned now celebrated life. The ethical controversy over the cannibalism needed for survival sparked debates worldwide, but experts unanimously recognized that it was a necessary act to survive. Many survivors carried the psychological scars for decades. Survival guilt, PTSD, and the haunting memory of the mountains stayed with them. Yet, some turned their experience into a mission telling their story, inspiring books, films, and studies of human psychology and survival. Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 is more than a story of tragedy. It is a story of resilience, moral courage, and human spirit. And these mountains took everything, but they also revealed the unimaginable capacity of people to endure, adapt, and survive. The Andes remain silent, but the story of Flight 571 echoes across time, a story that reminds us that even in the most extreme circumstances, the human spirit can prevail. The mountains claimed much, yet the survivors reclaimed life. Their courage, hope, and resilience inspire generations. Could you survive under such circumstances? Would you make the choices they made? Comment below with your thoughts. For more true stories of survival, resilience, and unsolved mysteries, subscribe and hit the bell icon. These are real stories, stories of extraordinary courage in the face